Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the People's Law School. This is the first session here of our new program this year, and I'm so excited. We have the mayor of the city of Huntsville, Tommy Battle, coming to speak to us. And I want you to know that, I want you to remember this is a lawyer program. And you all know the number one rule of the lawyer program is we do not have lawyer jokes. And we all know why. It's because lawyers don't think they're funny and other people don't think they're jokes, right? Remember that. So the first article we have for you in your booklet is the fact that Tommy Battle has announced that he is not running for governor. So he will be with us a little while longer. And I will proudly tell you that I know several years ago when he first came here, I predicted that he was headed for a higher office, and I thought maybe the Senate or something because he's such a capable person. He has done a fabulous job for the city of Huntsville, and I'm proud to have him with us tonight. Tommy Battle. Thank you so much for coming, Mayor.
I want to thank Alan for having the People's Law School. This is just a great forum to be able to talk about your community, talk about what's going on. We won't give any lawyer jokes because lawyers don't think they're funny and we know they're real. But we will start talking a little bit about the city of Huntsville. The city is 185,000 people. We brand ourselves a smart place to live, work, and play. And when you start thinking about that, why would we brand ourselves a smart place? Fortune magazine named Huntsville one of the top 10 smartest cities in the world. Inc. magazine named Huntsville one of the top 5 nerdiest cities in the world. So, you start thinking about that. And I always tell people when we start talking about it, it's a smart place. And we've been named one of the smartest cities in the world, one of the top 10 smartest cities in the world. I always tell everybody that you have to remember that we use our political figures to hold down the front end of that bell curve. Over the top of the bell curve are a lot of smart people. Down here would be a lot of the people who are in elected office. But we really, we do that because we are a community. We're a community of engineers. We're a community of degreed professionals. We have the second largest research park in America. We have the 4th largest research park in the world. And when you look at that technology that was brought to us by some German scientists back in the 1950s that has built upon itself, and we've used that research park to now have 27,000 people working in Research Park. We have Redstone Arsenal where we do Army Material Command, we do missile defense. We do NASA and are doing the SLS heavy lift rocket. When you look at that, all that technology drives it and makes us a smart place to live, work, and play. When you're in city government, you have to start working on how do we focus on where we need to go and what we need to do. I get to play a big version of SimCity every day with the city of Huntsville. We get to work on infrastructure. We get to work on economy. We get to work on jobs. We get to work on education. Your day is covered with a lot of different issues, and all those issues add up to being a city, and a city that is growing, that is vibrant, that is smart, but it's also a city that has a lot more potential of things that will happen in the future. Lots of things happening right now. One of the things we work on daily is education, because we know that education is one of the foundation blocks that has to be in your community to provide that your community continues to grow, continues to have jobs, continues to be a community that brings in people from all over the world. When we start talking about Huntsville, how many of y'all are originally from Huntsville in here? That's about right. From 55 would be originally from Huntsville, but probably about 10 to 20% of you are from Huntsville. The rest of us come from somewhere else. We always say that the people who are from Huntsville are lucky. The people who have moved to Huntsville and stayed in Huntsville are smart. And when we start looking at that and look at the numbers of people who have come here, we start saying, why do people move here? They move here for jobs and economy. They move here because we have a good education system, both a public education system and a 2-year college system and a college system, a degreed system. But they also move here because of quality of life. and you look across the board, that's some of the things that we work on every day, trying to see why we want people to come here. Now, many of y'all who aren't from Huntsville, do you remember the first time that you went home and you talked to your spouse and you said, honey, we're looking at moving to Huntsville, Alabama? Did they say, and this is the classic lines that we usually hear, they say, where? They say, Alabama. And then they said, where's Huntsville? And then the final thing they say is, in a very nice way, I'm not sure that that was on my radar. And so then they start looking at that and they start saying, what is this area about? We had the same thing happen when Army Material Command decided to move here with BRAC. Army Material Command said, we're going to move our operations to Huntsville, Alabama. So they start talking about moving their operation here. And first reports we had was that 17% of the people were going to move. 17%. That was not looking very good or very bright for our future. And they did something very wise. They sent down what they called the scouts. That's the first people to come in. And that's the people who usually have a lot of friends and they know other people and everything else, but they're also the adventurous ones. So they came down and they got here and they started working here, and all of a sudden they started calling back home. They said, you know, you need to come look at this place. This isn't a bad place. This is a great place. We have an 18-minute commute to work and we have an 18-minute commute back home. And they said, I know that you're sitting in Washington, D.C., and you've got a 2-hour commute to work and a 2-hour commute back home. They said the cost of living is about 20% lower than what we had in Washington, D.C. They said our public school system is very good. They said, you have all these amenities here. You have a symphony. You have an art museum. You've got all the amenities that you would want, and plus you have a big town, little town feel. It's a little town small enough that you can go down the streets and you'll see somebody that you know and you wave at them, but it's also a big enough town, there's always somebody new to meet. And when they got finished with that process and they got finished talking to their neighbors, co-workers, the people that they were working with, over 70% of those people moved to Huntsville. So that's one of the things that we work on a day-to-day basis. How do we get that move from 16% who want to come here to that 70% who want to come, who actually make that move? How do we get that to happen? And part of it is telling our story. We just got back this last week. We were in New York City. In New York, we go once a year and we have what we call a media tour. We go and see some of the media from throughout, the national media from throughout the U.S. We saw Fox Business, we saw NPR, so we covered both sides of the spectrum. We saw Fortune Magazine, we saw ABC, CBS, NBC, we went to CBS Radio, and Scholastic Magazine, some people that you wouldn't expect, but we saw lots of industry across the board, a lot of the media across the board, and we started talking to them about Huntsville, and we started telling our story. And we do that once a year. We go up and we tell a story, and we talk about a city that is growing, that's vibrant, that has jobs, that has an economy, that has a good quality of life. We have an economy because of several things. First off, we have Redstone Arsenal. 27,000 people work at Redstone Arsenal. Army Material Command, Missile Defense, Army Aviation, PEO Aviation, Space and Missile Defense, NASA. When you look across the board at all those 37,000 people who work on Redstone Arsenal, you can see that we have an economy out there. And a lot of people talk, we need to diversify. We need to diversify away from that government dollar. But when you look at it, we have a diversity within the federal government of what we do. When you look out at the Redstone Arsenal, we have 47 different agencies working on Redstone Arsenal. Everything from ABTF to FBI to all the alphabet soup groups that you can talk up. But they're all sitting there working on the arsenal, and it's a broad, diverse group who are working on the arsenal. So we have diversity just within what we have in federal government spending in Huntsville. But also we've worked to diversify our economy and our community. We started years ago, 1980, In the 1980s, I was on city council, and we started talking about diversity. We need to diversify. We need to get away from that, that one thing that is the government dollar. And so we started working doing that, and we came up with a Toyota motor plant. We came up with a Chrysler. We came up with Intergraph. We started working on AdTrend. We started working on Digium. We started working on companies from throughout the area that were not government suppliers and not dependent on that government dollar, so we could spread out some of our economy, and we could not be so dependent on the federal dollar. We got to where we had a regional medical community here. We brought in Comprehensive Cancer Institute. We brought in Hudson Alpha Biotech, and all that started adding up to a great growth in our economy. And it was growth in our economy, and we ended up diversifying. But just as fast as that area grew, the arsenal grew, and our government contracting grew. They grew through the 1995 BRAC when we moved Army Aviation Command here. They grew through the 2005 BRAC when we moved Army Material Command here. And I don't think anybody realizes in Huntsville, we didn't realize at the time how big it was to have a 4-star command moving to Huntsville, Alabama. There are 11 4-star generals in the U.S. Army, 11, and they actually run what goes on in the Army. We have one of them here. General Dennis Vi is a great partner for this community, and he's a person who steps out and is a leader in this community. You'll see him on numerous occasions. But General Vi brought us the Association of the U.S. Army Winter Conference here. The biggest association of the U.S. Army, the biggest trade show for the U.S. Army that there is, and he brought it here, and it's coming here in February. And General Vi has been working as a leader in this community, but we didn't realize what we had when we got a 4-star command coming here. A 4-star command upped the level of importance of Redstone Arsenal immensely, and that has made us grow exponentially at the Arsenal. But we also grew exponentially out everywhere else. We had Boeing come in just recently. We had the Boeing announcement of 400 jobs, $100,000 a job, coming in for an engineering center of excellence. Now you think about that, 400 jobs, $100,000 a job, that adds $40 million year in and year out to our economy. $40 million coming into the Huntsville economy year in and year out. Recently, we had 235 jobs announced for the GE Intelligent Platform 2 days ago. And that GE Intelligent Platform has 235 jobs, averaging $50,000 a job, $11 million coming in this community year in and year out. That's just in the salary. That's not in their investment in material and building and plant and everything else. So that's why we're seeing growth in our economy. That's why we see growth. But when we start talking about Huntsville and we start talking about growth in Huntsville, we're not really talking Huntsville City proper, that 185,000 people who live in Huntsville City proper. We're talking about Madison, we're talking about Madison County, we're talking about a 14-county area all the way across North Alabama. Because if you look at it, our arsenal has people from 14 counties all the way across North Alabama and into South Tennessee that come here every day, they work, they finish work. We hope they stop and eat and shop a little bit, and we get some sales tax off of them. And then they end up going back to Tennessee, or they go back to Florence, or they go back to Rogersville. But they come in here and they work every day. And we have about 60,000 people who come to Huntsville every day and work, and then they go back to another community. And that's one of the things that we have to think about. When we talk about growth here, we're talking about growth across the North Alabama area. That kind of growth keeps us as a community, as a vibrant community, and a community that always has a great future. And when we start talking in the city of Huntsville about growth, we really want to make sure that we do it right. We want to have planned growth. We want to have smart growth. We don't want to have exponential growth. We've seen what happens with exponential growth. We've seen Atlanta overrun its infrastructure. We've seen Birmingham, Mobile, Montgomery have 20 and 30 and 40-minute commutes to and from work. We want to keep that quality of life we have, but we want to have some planned growth. We want to have smart growth, because I know if it costs me $230 million to run my government this year, it's probably going to cost me $239 million to run my government next year, because of the cost of goods, the cost of oil, the cost of gas, all the things that you have to make it work. We have to have a growing community. If we don't grow, we die. And that's one of the things that you find in the life of a city. If you are a city, you have to give yourself potential to grow. You have to give yourself room to grow. That's one of the reasons we've had the annexation policy that we've had for years. I can tell you 2 or 3 communities, one of them is Tucson, Arizona, has been in here 3 times to benchmark against the city of Huntsville, because Tucson has a city right here, but it's had 6 little bedroom communities grow up around it. Those 6 bedroom communities have taken their upwardly mobile population, they've moved out to the bedroom communities, then they take their jobs and they set up office parks out there. Then they take the retail and they set up retail shops out there, and the Walmarts and the Costco's and everything else. And then they've taken their base. They've taken their financial base. And Tucson, Arizona has been running a $50 million deficit for the last 3 years. So we as a city have to make sure that we have room to grow. Smart growth, planned growth, but we have to have growth. And so we work on that, and we work on that on a daily basis. We also have to provide the services. We just went through a neighborhood meeting. It was somebody who was out on 72 East and a little bit north, and it was a community that's in the city of Huntsville, but we're not providing the services that we needed to. So we had to have some talks with some of our areas and some of our departments to make sure that we put the emphasis there where we needed to provide those services. But all that ties in to having a growing community, having a place that continues to grow. Part of having that growth is also having a plan. We plan on a daily basis, where are we going to be in 10, 15, 20 years? Where do we want our job base to be? What do we want to do education-wise so that we have that job base there? We've had 4 efforts going for the past 5 years in the city of Huntsville. The biotech effort, starting with Hudson Alpha, and we've had biotech schools, biotech high schools, programs that have brought people into the biotech area. Geospatial. We cut our teeth on geospatial with Intergraph, and we were one of the first companies in the world to do the geospatial, the mapping that we did with Intergraph. And we now have 15,000 people working in geospatial. Geospatial is a foundation for energy, it's a foundation for cyber, it's a foundation for lots of different practices. And with 15,000 people here, that's a great field for us to continue to work in that will have legs, that will last 15, 20, 25 years. Energy. Energy is not going away. We have companies here that work, Wiley Lab, 75% of their business comes from certification of nuclear parts. Ares Corporation does consultation with the People's Republic of China on their Westinghouse 3rd generation nuclear plants. Little Serena, not Serena, there's a small company out in Research Park that has found out how to put your hot water heaters on a grid and how to cut them off during the day so that you don't hit that peak shave, you knock off that peak shave and you don't use as much electricity. We have companies that work in conservation and cogeneration here in the energy field. And we also we've worked in the cyber field. Anybody in the cyber field is wherever you have communications between computers, between telecommunications, between each other, how do you keep it secure? How do you make sure that you have security there, that your financial records are secure, that your utility grid is secure? How do you make sure that if you're putting rockets up into space, that your rockets are secure and that when you push that button, the right thing's going to happen? That's called cybersecurity, and we've been working on that in this area. In fact, the Huntsville City Schools now has a cybersecurity program that works out of the Huntsville City Schools so that we can build a new generation of workers that will be able to come in and work in the cyber field. The Department of Army, the Cyber Command estimate they're going to need 10,000 workers over the next 6 years. They don't have those workers out there right now. And 6,000 of those workers don't have to have a college degree. They have to be more technical workers. And so we're training those right here in Huntsville so that we can have those workers to keep that industry moving over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Great on the economy. But how do we keep those jobs and how do we get those jobs here? What do we have to do as a community to make sure that we have those jobs? I would suggest to you that you have to have a good education system and you have to have a good quality of life. Your education system is one that you've got to have great public schools. And let me tell you, our public schools are stepping up and being recognized nationally. I think we've had 5 groups in this past week looking at our education system. They're talking about how do we do the one-to-one technology and get rid of the digital divide. They're talking about how do we assess our children to make sure that they're getting a year's worth of education or a year's worth of advancement out of a year's worth of instruction. How do you make sure that that happens? So we've seen our system go from several years ago. We were in dire straits, I would say. It was not a good, pretty picture. And now we've seen our system come to where people are coming from all over the country to look at our system and see what we're doing. The first thing we did was put in the digital one-to-one curriculum, where every child, 3rd grade and up, has their own laptop computer. Many people don't realize how much that means to these families. In Huntsville, we had a disparate system of education. The children from the low-income families were scoring down here in their educational testing. The families who had the wherewithal and had the money for the digital areas, they were scoring up here. So how do you bring these kids who are down here, bring them up to here, so that everybody is part of the success of what you call Huntsville? So we started working with them on providing computers to everybody 3rd grade and up. For a lot of these families and a lot of these kids, it's the first time they've ever had a computer in their home. Many of the families who had the wherewithal had computers in their home, and their kids were working on those computers every night. They were technologically savvy. But the kids who didn't were getting to work on computers 1 hour, 1 day a week, maybe in a computer lab. Now they had them 24/7. One of the things that I saw, we went to Richard Shower Center where we were doing a press conference on putting Wi-Fi in there so that they could have connectivity. And when I saw this, these kids came in who were 10 to 12 years old, who were from low-income areas, and usually they would throw their book bag in the corner and go play basketball. Now they're running, they're pulling out their computers, they're working on their computers, they're doing their homework, they're hitting the Pearson button that says help, how do I do this? They're getting tutorials, and they're engaged. One of the byproducts of having this one-to-one technology is that discipline problems have gone down by 50% because these kids are engaged in what they're doing in the classroom. So we're seeing, as we see this digital divide come, remember we've just been doing it for 2 years now, we're starting to see numbers come up. Numbers come up in reading by 25%. Numbers come up in mathematics by 18%. And we're seeing these classes, and these are these classes in what were known as, quote, failing schools. You might have seen the article last week that 9 Huntsville schools are, quote, defined as failing. Well, I tell you, when you look at the process and the progress of those schools over the last 2 years, they're not failing. They're looking really good. We're seeing numbers come up dramatically. We're seeing reading numbers come up dramatically. We're seeing teachers engaged, students engaged, and we're seeing a lot of progress. But remember that failing score, it goes on a 6-year sliding scale. So we've got a couple of years before we get rid of those, quote, labels. But those labels don't really define what's happening in that classroom. And then we've got another thing that we're doing. We have an accountability system put into the Huntsville City Schools. The accountability system is called the STAR assessment. Every child in the Huntsville City Schools gets assessed or gets tested 4 times a year. They get assessed and tested when they first come into that classroom, so the teacher knows where they're starting off. If they're on 3rd grade, they're in 3rd grade. Are they reading on 3rd grade level? Are they reading on 1st grade level, 2nd grade level? Are they teaching? Are they reading on 3rd grade level? They'll know that. And then they get tested twice during the year, and they get tested at the very end of the year. So what we're doing is we're checking to see, is that child getting a year's worth of advancement off of a year's worth of instruction? Is that classroom advancing 1 year over a year's worth of instruction? Is that school advancing 1 year over a year's worth of instruction? Those are very, very important things. Those things can make sure that we have some accountability in the system. Just went through 8 sessions with Casey Wardinski telling the story about the redistricting plan that was coming up in Huntsville right now. And during those 8 sessions, he said, you know, my principles, I have moved my principles where I think they can be most effective. 67% of his principles are new principles. 90% of his principles are in other schools. So he has been moving those so that they can be the most effective they can be, and I think we're starting to see the results of that with the scores that are coming. We had a graduation rate 3 years ago of 65% of our seniors. 65% of our seniors graduated and went on to wherever they were going to go, but the graduation rate was 65%. Today our graduation rate is above 80%. So we've seen dramatic improvement so far. So that's the education component. That's why somebody would come here for the education component. But what about the quality of life? Quality of life is something that I define as why you want to come here. Do you want to come here because you like greenways? Do you want to come here because you like parks? Do you want to come here because you like the symphony? I always joke with everybody, many people, you know, from Washington, D.C., when they were looking at the AMC, they were saying, well, we want to come somewhere with some culture. And they all look to see, did we have a symphony? Now, they may never go visit the symphony, but they want to see if there's a symphony there. They want to check that box off. They wanted to see, did you have Broadway theater coming in? Yes, we have Broadway Theater League, and it's coming in. They check that box off. Do you have an artist colony like Low Mill? And they would come here and they go see Low Mill, and they said, wow, we've never found something like this anywhere in the United States. 134 working artists working in a colony, all working separately but together, said this is a neat place to be. They've never seen a place where they can come have concert on the docks and bring their picnic dinner and maybe some of them even brought a bottle of wine and sit and listen to music and just enjoy being at a place. They never saw a community where they could come for a concert in the parks, where you come to Big Spring Park and we have free concerts every Monday night. And they came as a community and they met their neighbors and they get to see others and see what a community really is like. So they started looking at the things which were the quality of life, which is Big Spring Park, which is having the Von Braun Civic Center where we can bring in shows that are, you know, that fit into our market very, very well. Where you can bring in, then they started going to the high schools and seeing the programs putting on the arts and education in high school. They might have seen the program like we had at Butler Friday night, the Outsiders, and saw a community group or a local group of high school kids who put on a play and did just a wonderful job. But all that is part of our community. And they start looking at that community and they say, you know, they got some pretty good assets here. They got some pretty good things. But then they start looking and saying, what about the people? What about all those people who've come here? What about those people who 20% of them are from Huntsville and 80% of them are from somewhere else and have all come in here? And that's really the strength of this community when you start looking at it, because you start looking across the board and you will never find a community like this that gives back. Just last week, we had a police officer leaving work from South Precinct on Bailey Cove, was leaving work, and somebody came across 3 lanes of traffic and hit him head on. It was horrible. They had him up in Huntsville Hospital, and he was sitting up. He was in Huntsville Hospital in surgery, and we went to visit him that day to check on his family. Really, he was in surgery. We go up into the waiting room of the surgical unit up at Huntsville Hospital. Many of y'all been there, 2nd floor, and went back to check with the family, talked to his wife. He's under 30 years old. He's got a young wife, and we talked to his wife. His parents had just gotten here from Pensacola, Florida, and we had 2 police officers sitting there with them just to make sure they had whatever they need and to show them that we take care of our own. You know, so we had the 2 police officers there, and one of the police officers called me over and said, "Look, I want to show you something." And I said, "What's happening?" He says, the people out around here, we told them they didn't need to, but they said they wanted to take up a collection for that young officer's family. And he said, "Look," and he opened his pocket, and he had dollars and 5s and 10s all stuffed in his pockets that people had taken up and given for that young officer's family. He said, "If he needs anything, be sure and get it for him. Don't let them pay for anything." That's the kind of community we have. It's the kind of community that gives back time and time again. It's the kind of community that when you look at a problem, there's always somebody step forward to say, hey, maybe we got a solution, or maybe if we don't even have a solution, maybe we can work on it. Maybe we can work together to find something that makes this work. We are constantly looking around the board at what we have in this community, and the people make the difference. And that's one of the things that makes me the proudest to be mayor of this city, because day in and day out, I see good things that are happening. I see people who tonight are opening up shelters for the homeless because it's getting pretty cold, and they want to make sure that the homeless have a place to stay in a warming center. I see people who are going out and taking blankets and coats to those people to make sure that nobody freezes in the city of Huntsville. I can go over there and watch Fran Mueller work at Manor House, where she feeds 1,500 to 2,500 people a day who come through that line, and they'll wait 3 hours so that they can get a bag of food so they can take home to their families. And we make sure that we feed those who are hungry in our area. We make sure that we have a Boys and Girls Club that takes care of our youth and our underprivileged youth, our kids from the low income area, and we try to bring them along and make sure that they have the right things so that they can learn, so that they can progress, so that they can be a working citizen, a citizen who is part of this community and has a job. We try to make sure that we have jobs for those people. We try to make sure that we know that everybody's not going to be a rocket scientist or an engineer or maybe even a degree professional, but we have to have those production jobs, and we look for those production jobs on a regular basis, and we've been able to find quite a few of them lately, and I think we'll have some announcements later next month that you'll see there's even more coming. But we see those kind of things happening, and we see these people. We see that we have the people who can provide the job base for this area, and we get to see day to day how we make a community a success. That's kind of the magic of what I call as Huntsville. We can make that community a success, and as that success comes because of you, it comes because of a population, it comes because of a quality of life, it comes because of a form of education, and it also comes because we as a community have planned. We plan ahead. We look 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years down the road. We just did a 50-year plan out in the Greenbrier area. We've just hired an urban planner, long-range urban planner named Dennis Madsen, who is doing a comprehensive plan for the city of Huntsville that brings together all the elements of these little plans that we've had. We have a road plan here, we have a parks plan here, we have a plan on greenways here. Brings them all together and also gives our citizens time to come in and weigh in on them so that we're sure that we have a plan that works for all the citizens. We also are fortunate. We have a good infrastructure, but that infrastructure requires that planning of 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. That infrastructure in roads, if we decide to build a road right now, it's 10 to 12 years before we're right on that road. So if we decide to build a road right now, by the time we get our engineering done, our environmental assessments done, all the government checkoffs done, by the time we move utilities, by the time that we can buy right away, by the time that we can actually get the contract written, get the contract bid, get the contract executed, and actually have a road to ride on, it's 12 years. So everybody sits here and says right now, we have a good road system today because we can get from here to there in 18 minutes. We can get from home to work in an average of 18 minutes. We can get from work back home in an average of 18 minutes. So we have a good road system today, but that good road system of today is not the good road system of tomorrow. So we start planning 5, 10, 15 years ahead. Just recently, many of y'all might have seen that we went through some very interesting talks with the state highway department about roads. They came in last March and told us that we had $450 million worth of road projects that they weren't going to be able to do. In fact, in the next 5 years, the only road project that we had that was going to be done was County Line Road and I-565 and the interchange there. And we thought, that's going to set our community back quite a bit. That makes us lose our fight that we've had so long to stay ahead of infrastructure. That makes us get behind in the infrastructure battle. So we started talking to them and started doing our Restore Our Roads campaign, where we went out from place to place to place, and we went out to each of the projects that they had cut, and we talked about them, why they were essential to our area, what was needed. And we did it for a couple of reasons. We did it, number one, to educate the governor and the highway director. We did it to educate our legislative delegation because these are state roads that we're talking about, and it was very important that they understood the importance of them. But we did also to educate our citizens. So our citizens understood why we need roads, why it's so important, even if we have an 18-minute commute today, why it's so important to keep working on those roads so that we keep an 18-minute commute tomorrow. We tried to get the roads funded through A-TRIP funding. If you remember, A-TRIP funding was the $1 billion that was borrowed to put $1 billion worth of roads in Alabama. And we're told no, that A-TRIP funding is for replacing bridges and repaving roads, but not for major construction. So finally we went to the state and we said, listen, we're a growing community. We're a community that has to keep up with this infrastructure. How can we do this? And they came up with a plan where we had $250 million worth of roads, 7 road projects. They would pay for half of them, $125 million, and we would pay for half of them. Each of us had to put up $25 million a year. When we looked at it, we said, is this, we looked at it and we looked at it seriously. We said, is this a want or is this something, a necessity for our community? And we quickly came to the idea that this is a necessity for our community. If we didn't have it, we fall behind in our infrastructure. We start having 30-minute commutes, 40-minute commutes, 45-minute commutes, and all of a sudden we lose that quality of life. So then we said, if this is a necessity, how do we afford it? How do we afford an extra $25 million a year? And we got with council and we came up with the idea of putting a 1-cent sales tax on. Made the city of Huntsville sales tax starting March 1st be 9%. The same as what Madison is. Madison is 9%, Decatur's 9%, Athens is 9%, Arab's 9%. Made our sales tax be 9%, but we added that 1 cent on because we felt that it was essential that we keep up with roads. Because if we didn't keep up with roads and we start falling behind, we get to be like some of the cities other cities we see in the state of Alabama. We get to be like 280 down in Birmingham. We get to be like Montgomery during rush hour when you get on that southern bypass. We get to be like Mobile when you get on Airport Road in the midst of any of the part of the day, and it takes you 20, 25, 30, 40 minutes to commute from here to there. So we felt like that was important to us because that's part of our planning process. We've got to plan 15, 20, 25 years. If we plan out that long, we will find ourselves as a community living up to expectations. We'll find ourselves as a growing community, but we'll also find ourselves as a community who can afford to keep a good quality of life. That's what we do in the city of Huntsville. And I want to tell you, I appreciate y'all coming out tonight, and I will leave it open for questions now.
Sir, you mentioned more at the elementary school level. Could you mention something about the university?
Sure.
In the area?
You know, we're very, very fortunate. We have two two-year colleges. We have Drake Tech and we have Calhoun, who are two-year colleges, and they have two-year emphasis on many of the technical areas that we were talking about. They have emphasis on cyber. They have emphasis on geospatial. They have emphasis in the energy field. And then we also have four-year colleges. Oakwood University is more of a liberal arts university. We have the Land Grant University of Alabama A&M. We have UAH, which is an engineering university, and it brings engineers into the community and provides us engineers who work at the arsenal. Both Alabama A&M and UAH do. All that adds to part of our education platform that we have to have as a community. You add that to the secondary, to the elementary, the secondary schools, and you put in the two-year colleges, which to me are a necessity for our community because we have to have affordable colleges. The two-year colleges add an affordability factor to the colleges. And then you add what we have at UAH, you add what we have at Alabama A&M, what we have at Oakwood University. You find that we have a little bit of offering for anything that somebody wants to go into. And that's very nice to have right in your community here. Youth sports. Youth sports are, you know, it's kind of interesting when you start looking across the board at the sports nowadays. Frisbee, I call it Frisbee, it's disc golf, is a sport. And it is a very popular sport. In my day, Alan in my days, we used to just call it Frisbee because we threw the Frisbee and everything and would hope that girls would come around us and everything. But Frisbee golf is one of the sports that is really taking off, and we're building a disc golf facility down in South Huntsville. We've got one in North Huntsville over off of Maston Lake. We've got one over next to the stadium, the high school stadium. But that is one of the things that is really taking off. Beyond that, soccer is taking off, field hockey is taking off, ice skating, and we have lots of hockey here in town, which a lot of the people who come in and start looking around, they say, wow, Huntsville, Alabama, you have ice hockey? And we do have we have teams that come all the way from the mites all the way up to college level to the semi-pro level. We have a full offering of sports. We have a tennis center where I used to play tennis quite a bit, and I've played with Alan over there. Alan is a pro tennis player. He is a one of those highly rated guys who will try to hit you if he has a chance. And but across the board, we have our city golf course. We have just about every sport that you want to look at that you can find here in Huntsville. The natatorium, we were just talking about the natatorium. It's 40 years old, but it just hosted the #1 high school team in the state of Alabama, the Huntsville High swim and dive team. So we see that on a constant basis, that we provide a little bit for just about every sport that there is in that I can find. Yes, sir.
When's the deadline on the South Parkway roads?
Finish. One of the things that we did with this, if you remember years ago when we started on Weatherly and we started on Sparkman, we did the access roads. And we did the access roads. It took 3 years to do the access roads. And then the state ran out of money, so it sat there for 6 years. And then the state got money, and so we did the overpasses, and it took 2 years or 3 years to do that. So for about 12 years, we ended up with roads that were under construction. One of the nice things about the new road package that we have, because we're paying half of it, is we're going to be able to bid both the access roads and the overpasses all at one time. Our engineering is about 95% complete on the South Parkway Lily Flag Bird Springs overpass. Engineering is about 95% complete. We start that next fiscal year, which is the fiscal year of 14-15, and it's a 3-year build period. Once we get finished that 3-year build period, then we start repopulating South Parkway, because we're done with construction. We don't have to have those retailers that you go to and say, we'd like for you to locate down here, we'd like for you to look at this area. And they said, you're about to go under construction. If I go under construction, I can't make money down there. We're able to start repopulating that area, both South Parkway and North Parkway, the same thing. We've got Maston Lake, which is planned for, I think, the next fiscal year right after we start Bird Springs. So in the next 5 years, we will be starting seven projects, very significant projects, that by 2020 we'll be riding on all those roads, and we'll actually be able to enjoy the benefit of having those roads built.
Mayor, we're retired military families.
Sure.
Loved coming here, we would stay. But last year's spike in the murder rates and stuff are of concern. I mean, I know some folks are doing great stuff in law enforcement. What, is there something we need to do in the community?
Okay, the question was about the homicide rates here in the city of Huntsville. This year we had 24 homicides. Last year we had 16. That is too many. You know, one homicide is way too many. What we're seeing right now is we just got the preliminary numbers. Burglaries are down, robberies are down. Everything else is about static as to last year, except for the homicides, except for drug charges and drug arrests are up. Usually drug arrests tie back to the homicide arrests. Our police will be having a press conference within the next 2 weeks, and we'll be also looking at the comparison of Huntsville versus Birmingham versus Montgomery versus Mobile versus Chattanooga, cities that are like-kind cities. Birmingham is sitting about 70 homicides this year. Montgomery's sitting, I want to say, about 40 homicides this year. Mobile is sitting at I want to say close to 45, 50 homicides. We are much less than our other areas, but that still doesn't solve the problem. That doesn't mean that we're happy with where we are. Many of ours have been drug related this past year. That's one reason that our drug arrests are up. And we have a very competent police force that is working on that on a daily basis right now. In fact, probably a 24-hour basis to try to get that under control. Yes, sir.
Some years ago, there was some talk about making Huntsville a Wi-Fi city. What happened to that?
We are Wi-Fi in many, many places. We're not Wi-Fi. The question was, several years ago, there was a talk about Huntsville becoming a Wi-Fi city. What happened to that? We are Wi-Fi in many places. Big Spring Park, center of downtown, all that, it has Wi-Fi coverage. All of our community centers have Wi-Fi coverage. Many of our churches now have Wi-Fi coverage because for the digital technology to come in, they need Wi-Fi to be able to do it. So especially in the north end of town and some of the lower end areas where you have lower income kids, we have our churches providing Wi-Fi for those kids so they can come in and have study hall. We have covered just about every city park in the city of Huntsville. We've covered every community center in the city of Huntsville. So we can say that we have pretty good coverage across the board here. We don't have 100% throughout the city. I don't think you'll ever hit 100% throughout the city, but we do have it around most of our city facilities. And even if you go to a softball game out on Drake Avenue and Patton Road, you'll find Wi-Fi out there so you can take your computer as you watch your child play softball. Yes, ma'am.
My question relates to an earlier comment. With smart growth and planned growth, as you've alluded to, what kind of growth then are you expecting in your police departments?
What we've been looking at, and we have come out of, the question is, with smart growth and planned growth, what kind of growth are you planning in your police department? We have had a hiring freeze on the city of Huntsville the last 4 years. We have been through the recession like everybody else. We have seen less money coming in. We are just now hitting back to 2008 levels of funding of money coming back in. So we've had a hiring freeze on the city of Huntsville. Even with the hiring freeze, we have moved people, shifted people who are in certain jobs over to other jobs, over to inspector jobs, over to street patrol jobs, so that we can provide the kind of protection that you need. We talk to our police chief and to our lead officers on a regular basis, at least once a day, and we ask them, do you have the resources to do the job that you need to? They said they do. They feel like they do have the resources to do the job. If it proves that they don't, we're going to add police officers, and we will add police officers to the streets because that's where we need them right now. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have cameras in public places?
We do not. We have some cameras in public places, but we don't have as many as we like to. The legislature has not given us the power to have cameras at red lights, which we would love to have, because as the city of Montgomery will tell you, they got a local legislation bill passed so that they could do it. They will tell you that it makes people quit running red lights, and you can also keep up with them. They also have camera service that they can put out in residential areas to stop speeders coming through residential areas. If they speed through residential area, they're going to get a ticket, and they're going to send it to them. Both of those measures we have asked our legislature about. Our legislature is afraid that we are infringing upon people's rights, and how we infringe upon somebody's rights who is speeding through the area or running through red lights, I don't know. But we have not gotten there yet, and we have in fact asked again this year if we could have both the red light bill and the speeding bill, because that's kind of crucial. I mean, you're never going to have enough policemen to go back to the day of Car 54, Where Are You?, where you have 2 policemen riding around the streets doing all that. We depend on Community Watch an awful lot to partner with us in police protection, because they see somebody who's out of place, who's not supposed to be there. They call 721-7200, and we send someone out there. That is very, very effective. It's an effective way of getting the most efficiency you can out of your police force. We partner with the community to do that. Where you see that we have high crime incidents, you'll usually find that there's not a community watch in that area, because community watch is one of the deterrents for crime happening in an area. So we work on that on a day-to-day basis. Yes, ma'am.
Back to the road situation. I know that the 1% sales tax was voted on and voted in for that very reason, to fund the road projects. what happens if the state reneges on their portion of the money? Does that sales tax remain, or does it go back?
The question is, what happens if the state reneges on their portion of the sales tax? Of the sales tax and doing the road projects, do we stop collecting the sales tax is kind of it. We right now have we had our first draft of our contract come in Thursday of last week. We're tweaking it some. We will have a contract with the state. John Cooper, who's the director of Alabama Department of Transportation, has guaranteed us that we will have an ironclad contract to take care of those 7 projects. A lot of people ask, why don't you just sunset it after 5 years? Because we have 5 years worth of projects. The thing that we have to look at is past 5 years, we have I think I wanted to say about $455 million worth of projects that have to be done over the next 20 years. One of them is the Southern Bypass. Our traffic studies show that between 2029 and 2039, the Parkway gets over capacity. When it gets over capacity, you go to gridlock. And the Southern Bypass has a cost to it of probably about $200 million. And so we're going to have to go to the state and we're going to have to work with them to see how we can build a Southern Bypass, because we've got to have another north-south corridor that can run parallel to the Parkway. One of the plans that's not in this group that we're looking at is Research Park Boulevard. If anybody came in there today and noticed the backup on Research Park Boulevard coming into Gate 9, we have to do something to fix that, and that means taking out the bridge at 565, at 72, and getting north of 72. A huge number on that. So we have lots of needs that go way beyond that. Part of our legislation, though, part of the ordinance, is that we have to spend a minimum of $25 million a year on road construction. If we can spend $25 million a year minimum on road construction, we'll never catch up completely, but we will keep ourselves in that range where we can keep that quality of life with an 18-minute commute to and from. Yes, sir.
Bring us up to date on the old airport that upgrades, particularly after the stars in the new town.
Yeah, we have John Hunt Park. We have done a redesign plan for John Hunt Park. Has amphitheater in there, has a big facility there to do indoor volleyball, indoor soccer, all wrestling tournaments, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of that is just the redesign of that whole area. The Stars will play through 2014. After 2014 and 2015, they have a contract with us to play, but they say that they might be moving to Biloxi. If they are, we'll have some conversation about it, and it will be interesting. But we already have plans for middle school football games at the Joe Davis Stadium. We already have some plans for lacrosse games at Joe Davis Stadium. We have some plans for some other functions happening at Joe Davis Stadium after the 14 season, so that we can turn that whole facility into a true multi-use. We don't have enough capacity for all of our middle school football games, so we're looking at middle school football and lacrosse and soccer, and using that stadium for that reason. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask a question about the John Hunt Park.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you consider putting a new natatorium there? The natatorium we have is very old, it's very dilapidated, and we need a new natatorium, state-of-the-art.
The question was a new natatorium, and that's always one of the questions. In fact, we were talking about that an hour ago. We were talking, John Hamilton, who is our city administrator, very good city administrator. He's on top of things, and he said, at some point we've got to bite the bullet. We've got, in 2017, we have $15 million for a new natatorium, so that's not going to touch it. Our natatorium is 40 years old. It was state of the art when it was built, and we had Southeastern Conference swim meets here. We had lots of swim functions here. And in talking to him, I said, John, what we've got to be sure, though, is that we have public buy-in on this. I mean, how many people are using the natatorium? How much, how many advocacy groups are there? How many of them can put up something? Most of the time when we do projects, we do, if you'll put up, half, we'll put up the other half. On sports projects, it's usually if you'll put up 25%, we'll put up the other 75%. But you ask the community to come forward and put up money on those so that you see that you have advocacy out there, that you have the right kind of advocacy to be able to go forward with doing something like that. So we're looking at the question mark right now. How much is it going to take? You know, estimates, early estimates say $25 to $30 million. And when we start talking about spending $25 to $30 million of the taxpayers' dollars, you know, are we having enough advocacy to drive that? What we generally like to have is have enough advocacy that says you need to do it rather than we'd like for you to do it, and say that we're providing some of the money to do that too. So we're working on that one. It's a conversation that is being had right now. Yes, ma'am.
I hear about the building of a lot of your infrastructure, roads in particular,
Sure.
schools, parks, those things. A lot of that critical infrastructure needs protection during either man-made or natural disasters. What is the city doing in looking at protection of its people and infrastructure during these kind of disasters?
Sure.
The tornadoes.
Yeah, you know, tornadoes, the question is, what are we doing for advocacy to help our citizens during man-made disasters, or not man-made, but natural disasters such as tornadoes? Each of our schools, building seven new schools, each of our schools have tornado rooms, shelters in it, and the tornado shelters are big enough. They are rooms that are built so that they can take on the blast of a tornado, and all the students can go into those rooms. I mean, they're big rooms. It's like a big gym. Each one of those has facilities there. Beyond that, we've tried to say that we're going to get a little bit smarter. When Tuscaloosa had its tornadoes come through on April 27th, it wiped out their whole garbage fleet, and it wiped out all of their facilities that did all their public works. We've split up some of our facilities now so that if something does hit, at least it doesn't take out everything. You know, it's one of those things that you can plan, but you never know when those tornadoes are coming in. But we keep working on a day-to-day basis so that we can work smart, and so that if something happens, it's not a total disaster for the area.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan.
Wonderful as always.